Welcome to Relative Insights. Our mission is for all people to access transformational and educational resources in the field of mental health and emotional wellness. Doris and Jennifer discuss current issues and approaches to living a life of hope and fulfillment. This podcast is not a replacement for therapy. The conversations, guests, tips discussed are provided as educational, thought-provoking, and inspiring. Our opinions are not specific therapeutic advice. Views expressed are our own personal perspectives and experiences. Information heard here is to be used at your caution and discretion. As always, please seek out individual mental health care to best serve you. Hey there.
Hi.
How are you doing?
Good. Ready, fired up for another podcast with my cousin.
Yes. Yes. We made it.
Yeah. What are we talking about today, cuz? Something super awesome and enlightening.
It is. It's racial-based traumatic stress, racialized trauma, however you want to refer to it. It's been referred to by many names, but it's such a huge topic. Like, I know we won't be able to cover it all in a short amount of time, but yeah, I was caught up in my feelings a couple of weeks ago because I was attending a conference, and this was the first seminar where I was the only Black student there, and I missed seeing people of color and self-help and emotional wellness. You look at all of the talk about vulnerability and being open. And it was just I guess I was triggered or inspired to be like, dude, well, not all places are safe for people to be vulnerable. And so there's always this push of share more, open up more. And I understand the importance of being honest and also strengthening and building intimacy. Mm-hmm. But I think that it needs to be understood in the context of, have places been safe for people of color where they can be honest and vulnerable, when part of our survival that has passed on from one another is to, have thick skin, to be tough. So yeah. So that's how I'm feeling.
I think also, like, it's been, I think, like, I'm just going to speak like for myself, it's just been like, I've always worried that being vulnerable would show me as weak. It's like, oh, well, she can't handle this or she can't handle that. So, it made me shy away from being vulnerable around, like, people who don't look like me. And also I think overarching, just the fear of judgment, because I'm already feeling awkward and out of place, because the people that are around me don't look like me. But just, I'm always, I guess that this also probably touches on vulnerability. I always feel hyper sensitive and hyper aware of
Mm,
stereotypes. Do you know what I mean?
mm,
Like, I'm just like,
mm.
I need to make sure that I don't sound a certain way or I don't look a certain way so that I'm not judged, you know, based off of the stereotypes that are out there about people who look like me. Does that make sense?
It does, absolutely. Um, just as you were speaking about being in those type of spaces, um, first, like my operative definition of vulnerability, and I think we talked about this before we started recording, was being honest about where I am in the moment and asking for help
Mhm.
and asking to say, hey, I need this from you right now, or I need this assistance, or yeah, asking for what I need. And that seems like a cornerstone for any relationship. But when you talk about stereotypes, there is a message as far as stereotypes go already that um, Black people shouldn't be asking for help, and that they're needy, or that they're lazy, or that they rely on welfare. And so you see all of these people suffering in silence and being like, and maybe we're conditioned as children because our parents were operating with fighting against those stereotypes of pull yourself up by the bootstraps,
Mhm.
you can't cry, you can't complain, you da 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 da, you better take care of business. And when I look at my other friends who are not Black, guess what? People who are resourceful are always asking for help.
Yes.
And they have no qualms of like, hey, I need help. This is where I'm at. Holler at me. And it's like all of a sudden they pull these resources together. And yeah, it just seems even just to ask for help. And that's something that I'm struggling with, but I'm working on it,
Mhm.
is just to be able to ask for help and to be honest about that and say, I need this.
Yep.
Like, I'm in the mental health profession and I felt bad saying I need to be comforted and encouraged because I have no problem giving that out to other people, but yet asking for it myself sounds like a death sentence.
I used to feel that way in my own family. Like, I guess because I had this belief that, like, you know, if I, which is contradictory to what I tell my clients all the time, like, ask for help, lean on people. Your support system is important. Never be afraid to ask for help because we're all human. But I realized when I look back on my own life, it's like, I was always afraid to ask even family members, like, for any type of financial assistance or emotional support. It's like, no, you don't. Everyone can come to you, but you can't go to anyone else because
Mm,
that means that you aren't strong. That you're not strong enough or whatever have you. And especially on the financial point, because I think already, like, we kind of have this stereotype that, like, Black people aren't good with money, and that, we're all in debt and we're this and we're that, right? And so, like,
mm,
I know just within my own family, like, even though no one's giving me that message in my family, it's just kind of like ingrained in me. It's like, you don't ask for help because you don't want to appear like you can't handle your
yes.
finances. And then my ex-husband, who is Caucasian, like, I would see him constantly, like, Mom, like, can you send me $500? Or Mom, can you send me $1,000? Or Mom, can you send me $5,000? And I was like, what? First of all, dude, it doesn't bother you that you're leaning on your family for so much money? Like, no, what do you mean? And of course she's gonna give it. Like, I don't. What do you mean? I was like, but do you feel like odd, or does it make you feel any kind of way? Why would it make me feel any kind of way? That's my mom. Like, that's what you do. You lean on your family for support. And I was like, and the more I saw this, the more I was like, man, like, maybe my way of thinking wasn't the best way of thinking, like that I can't lean on my family, or I shouldn't. Not that I can't, but I shouldn't. When
Yeah.
family is that's your support system. Like why not? And then when I started leaning on them, I was like, dang, this feels good. Like it feels good to have that foundation, that fallback, that safety net. But it took me seeing a white man be able to lean on his white family, and me saying, wait, that doesn't mean that you're bad with money, or that you're weak, or that all this stuff that I feel like has been ingrained in me from society, before I really started turning around and looking at it differently.
That is awesome. I love it and I applaud you. And as you're saying it, especially at the last part about how great it is to lean on family, for me, I look at it as I wouldn't lean on my parents. And it's just that would be a means of them controlling me. And so being independent provided autonomy, because it would be a series of, what do you need the money for? Or, now I'm going to tell you how you need to spend it. And that might be a complete fantasy or a projection, but it's also based on life as a child. And so it's, you know, I'll go down, but I'll go down by myself, not serving other people.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, if you when you have an inside look at families who maybe aren't people of color, they don't have that same message. Like, and whether or not our parents intend to give us a message or not, somehow people of color are getting that message that it's not okay to lean on others. Like, you have to stand on your own 2 feet, or you'll be looked at as lazy. Whereas, people who don't look like us, and I'm only speaking for like the Caucasian the families that I have been around, the message that they're constantly given is, it's okay. It's okay to lean on us. It's okay. Like, dude, you're not any less than, and it helped. And speaking to vulnerability, it's just like, they're allowed to be vulnerable. They're allowed to ask for help and say,
and to be quick about it.
Yes.
Like, I mean, that literally happened in this group processing where we had come back from a break, and the teachers were going to do demonstrations, essentially, of coaching. And I was caught up in these feelings, and I'm like, I think I would benefit. Like, I've been in this training, and it wasn't until like this I've been in like 4 trainings, and every single time that I've been there, my focus was, I need to hone my craft. I need to work on building my skills. But yet I saw tons of students who are like, I love receiving support from these teachers and being a client. And I was just like, oh, this is like, I'm almost finished. And I'm like, I never even thought to ever ask for that, or to even put myself in that position. And then I was like, I only have one more training left. And so there's this opportunity for people to volunteer. But do you think I volunteered and raised my hand and said, oh, pick me, I really need to talk? Nope. I just like waited for the system to like rule out people. And then it came down to like, might have been 16 of us. There are 3 of us left, and we hadn't been eliminated. So the teacher's like, all right, who would like to? And did I shoot my hand up and say, I need this, I really need it? No, I was like, wishy-washy, slowly raising my hand. And a woman of European descent was like, right away, just like, I know what I need, I know what I want, I'm going to ask for it now. And that brought up, just in that instant, like all of these feelings of inadequacy and my own conditioning and feeling like uncomfortable and comparing myself to someone else who felt totally comfortable, and just like I was like, what's the point of being vulnerable if you get rejected? Because it seemed like the system has set me up to fail anyway. And so that's how it was that day. And so I
You
really
actually have that thought that the system has set me up to fail, or is that something that you kind of process later?
um I think I was thinking about it. I think I was thinking about it probably minutes afterwards. Minutes afterwards. And yeah, I looked at my own inadequacy, and then I thought of, oh, people talk about vulnerability, but here I am, slowly but surely getting the courage to ask, and I get, you know, I lose out on an opportunity to receive a service. Number one, because I never even thought to ask for it. And then when I do ask for it, there are other people who are um, conditioned to ask for things quickly and immediately, and to say what they need and say what they want. And, about being assertive. It's also about vulnerability. But yeah, so it was a very interesting, it was a very interesting day after that for me. Um, but yeah. And so now I think of how many people don't trust the spaces that they're in, where they're told, like, you need to be vulnerable and tell people what you need. But are they actually going to be heard, or are they going to be minimized or rejected? Because I can look back on my life to tell people about my experience. Um, and it just kind of, I don't know, have an experience of being dismissed.
And I can't remember. Did you already say like earlier, like the book that basically had you, starting to really think about racialized trauma and vulnerability? I can't remember. Have you already stated that?
I haven't. No. I mean, I've mentioned it on other podcasts, but yes, I'm in the middle of reading My Grandmother's Hands by Resma Menachem. Did I say his last name right? I'm not sure.
I
I
think
apologize if I
that's right
mispronounced
too.
it, but it's Resma for sure.
Let me look back at it.
Maybe Resma Menachem. But while he doesn't talk about vulnerability, he really, what I appreciate about his book is empowering people to track and heal what's in their bodies, because the experience isn't just in our minds. And we have these automatic reactions in real time, um, based on our nervous system. And so he gives a series of body practices and exercises and activities to kind of challenge people of color, also people that are Caucasian or have, European descent, but he talks about race. Um, and then also law enforcement as well, and just the somatic experience in their bodies. And so that's been interesting as well. Um, yeah, it's a wide topic. But yeah. And maybe we should even describe or define what racial trauma is. On mentalhealthamerica.org, mhanational.org, I'll read a definition. Racial trauma or race-based traumatic stress refers to the mental and emotional injury caused by encounters with racial bias and ethnic discrimination and hate crimes. Individual that has experienced an emotionally painful, sudden, and uncontrollable racist encounter is at risk of suffering from a race-based traumatic stress injury. In the US, Black, Indigenous people of color are most vulnerable due to living under a system of white supremacy. And I would say, I know that Resma brings up, it's not just experiencing it yourself, but you can also experience trauma by witnessing it occur somewhere else. Or you also experience trauma if you acting out on if you're acting out this violence towards people. So it's like oppressors and oppressed will have traumatic responses, and kind of his premise is that we have unprocessed trauma in our bodies that haven't been worked out, messages that have been passed on from generation to generation, and we have these default responses, and until we work out this trauma, we're going to be acting out violence and, these encounters where people are being killed or mistreated or dismissed because of unprocessed trauma. So one of the chapters really talks about, and when people talk about trauma, many times you think about acute events where someone's being murdered in a street, but across the board there is microaggressions, or there are microaggressions, and those are chronic and on a day-to-day basis, and those are almost impossible to detect as well, but they're persistent and pervasive, and most of the time, like Resma notices, it's mostly unconscious. But these are ways in which people deliberately express disdain for Black bodies. And so, he takes readers through exercises of noticing what's happening in their body and what they're noticing and how they respond. And also with people of color, how do we respond when we are in an unfamiliar place or with an unfamiliar person? And what do we do almost unconsciously? Maybe sometimes consciously, so that, we can be in a safe place or not feel as a threat. So, yeah.
I had a client, like, we kind of processed through some racialized trauma and microaggressions came up, and and I was so proud of her, her self-awareness on the topic and on what had actually happened to her. And she was saying how her college is majority Caucasian, and that her classes thus reflect that. And so, all of her classes, I think that semester, she was the only Black person, I think, especially this particular class. But, there was a Caucasian female in the class that, repeatedly pronounced her name incorrectly, even though, my client would tell her, actually it's blah, blah, blah. And you're like, oh, I'm sorry. And then would still say it incorrectly. And a lot of people, if you were to ask, I think the same thing happened with our vice president too. I don't know if you remember, I think it was our governor mispronounced her name. And he tried to say that, oh, it was an accident, but really it was not. It was a microaggression because he made a point of saying, Kamalama Ding Dong or whatever, however you say her name. And I think she said something later, like saying he's worked with me for many years. He's known how he's pronounced my name correctly on many occasions. And it's like they do that sometimes unconsciously, but I think that, more times than not, it's a very conscious, microaggression to say that, like, I don't feel comfortable with you. I'm not okay with you being in my presence. And that's how I felt for, like, as my client was telling me about this female in her class. I think that the female felt threatened by her. Here's this intelligent Black woman doing really well in this class to the point where, people were asking her for help on certain things. I'm not okay with that. So how can I belittle her? How can I bring her down a notch or a peg or whatever? I'm just going to mispronounce her name, and that has meaning behind it. Now, someone who does not look like us may witness that incident and be like, oh, they didn't mean anything by it. Oh, it's fine. They didn't mean to get, but how it feels. It hurts. That you're not feeling this pain and this sometimes anger for no reason. There is something behind it. And these microaggressions, they really do pile up. They really do affect your self-esteem, your self-worth, especially if you're not able to acknowledge it or process it correctly. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And I mean, one of the stories in the book, Resma was talking about his wife in Walmart and leaving, and she was heading out, and the clerk asked to look at her receipt to check. And she's like, okay. And instead of leaving, she went to go get something to drink. Instead of leaving the store, and she proceeded to watch like 20 people leave the store, and 8 people who were checked to see if, have their receipts checked and their carts checked, were all Black people. And she was just like, oh, what? And went immediately to the manager, and the manager was shocked and went to the clerk, and the clerk was like, what? Like, in their mind, talking to the lady who witnessed it and the manager, she's like, I was just stopping people randomly, and the lady was like, the way she talked, she actually looked like she believed it, straight up believed it. And I'll go through this list of just examples of, really, there's just even if you tell someone else that this is your experience and this is how it felt, whether or not people believe you or not, they should validate your experience.
Yes.
That's it. It would be nice to be listened to and to have the dignity of saying, wow, that must have been really painful for you, instead of feeling uncomfortable and feeling like you have to justify the other person or say, well, maybe they were, maybe they're just absent-minded, or,
The thing that pisses me off, I'm just going to be straight up right now. Like, that pisses me off. Like, not only are you like not validating my emotions and what I'm going through and what I'm feeling, but you're also making me out to be the villain. Like, I'm overreacting about something. Like, I'm in the wrong here. That kind of thing really upsets me, because I'm just like, then what's the point? Why even? I can't even bring it up. I can't even talk about it. I can't even bring this to your attention without you still telling me nothing's wrong here. Everything's fine. You're the quote unquote, I hate the word, crazy one. That's one thing that, like, that's that. Okay. I'm just gonna remember that now.
I'll remember that when I want to bother you.
No.
But here's some of the ways where people fail to show regard. Not listening or paying attention to someone, or outright ignoring them as if Black bodies were invisible.
Mm,
Interrupting or talking over Black people.
mm,
Not taking someone seriously. For example, saying, "You don't really mean that," or "You don't really think that," or "You don't
mm,
really feel that way," or "It's wrong to feel that way."
mhm,
Giving a brief, perfunctory, minimalist, or non committal response, such as, "Fine, whatever you say,"
mhm.
or "Yes, I care, and I need to go now." Refusing to acknowledge someone's lived experience, either by denying that it happened or by fleeing into statistics or legalisms.
Oh, yes. Mm,
Acting visibly frustrated and impatient with someone as if his or her presence is burdensome, or as if what he or she is saying is childish or ludicrous.
mhm.
Saying, "Be reasonable," then demanding something unreasonable or.
Mm,
And finally, speaking words of care or concern, but without empathy or sincerity. This is especially common among police and elected officials when dealing with racialized issues and with crimes committed against African Americans. For
mhm.
instance, a police chief might say, "We've got to do a better job at training our officers so they avoid racial profiling," but in such a way that the actual unspoken message becomes, "I'm saying the words I'm required to say, but they're just for show. I intend to continue
Yes.
with business as usual."
Yes. And then they walk
Uh,
off and tell their buddy, "Man, I can't stand these." No,
entitled crybaby.
yeah,
Yeah.
like these uppity N words, like they getting too much around. I'm telling you, behind closed doors, the things that I have heard, sometimes you can be like this, you know, invisible person as a Black woman, like off in the
Mm,
corner doing your work. I cannot tell you how many times I've heard conversations that, they just didn't know I was there, didn't pay attention to the fact that I was there. And it's just, it's infuriating. It's disheartening to hear how so many, and I'm not talking about a whole group of people. I'm just talking about racist people.
hmm
How they view us. Like, oh gosh,
Yeah.
this Joe Rogan thing got me upset yesterday. Like, I mean, like they were like, I was reading about like, and to me, I guess that goes back into just this whole systemic
Mm,
racialized trauma. It's like these big, huge entities allowing things to continue to go on, right? So, like Spotify, I don't know if you heard about it, but like, you
oh, I
know,
did.
oh, you did. Okay, so
It's
first it
all
was like
over. Yeah.
surrounding COVID, right? But then, I saw the NDRE had taken her music off, and I wanted to know why. So I went down the rabbit hole to figure out why. And apparently he'd been saying like just very derogatory things towards Black people. And
Hmm.
and I saw another comedian say, that I think Joe Rogan was being paid like millions upon millions of, I'm not going to quote specific
Yeah.
how many millions, but I'm just sitting there like, as a Black person reading this, seeing that it does not matter to Spotify that there's someone on their platform, not saying, "Hey, Spotify thinks that all Black people are apes," but the fact that Spotify is telling me they don't care that there is a person on their platform calling us apes, calling us the N-word, saying all these really derogatory things, makes me feel again less than. Like I don't matter. Do you know what
Hmm.
I mean? Like this does not matter to them at all. What matters is, again, once again, the bottom line of dollar bills. And then they're like, well, we put a discretionary disclaimer thing before his
Just now. Just now. Like, that's ridiculous.
What difference does that make? Like, why is he still making millions of dollars off of like off of our backs, off of calling us apes? And like I refuse to listen to the actual podcast. I refuse to give him any type of number towards his count. So I was
Hmm.
reading, but I was just like, you know he's sitting there like just laughing it up with whomever, talking about walking into a party where it was a bunch of Black people and he felt like he was just surrounded by apes. I'm like, why is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Why is
Mm-hmm.
that okay? It's not just the N word. It's
Absolutely.
and you are viewing us as less than, like we are not human. And that's what bothers me the most, is like this just constant view of people like that looking at us like we don't matter.
Yeah. And we are dehumanized. Our humanity has been stripped from us, and it was
Yes.
stripped a long time ago to perpetuate an economic system.
Yes.
And it continues and it echoes on to this day. And I mean, that just gets me. And people don't recognize it. People don't they think it's harmless, or they think, oh, that was taken out of context, and can make a bunch of excuses. But there
I
is
don't
an
know how the heck
interesting.
is taken out of context that he calling Black people apes. I don't know how that could be taken out of context. Like, again, like we're
Yeah.
animals. Like
Yeah.
we're less than the dogs that they kiss on the lips and bring to the table and let the lap up their food. Like,
Absolutely. Absolutely. There was a podcast I was listening to. What is it called? Um, Judith Herman is she is a psychologist and did a lot of work with trauma. And back in probably the early 80s, back with like veterans and women of domestic violence. And she was on a podcast this past year. That I really want to bring up, because it was like a political podcast, but also psychological as well. And they were in the midst of like COVID, and January 6th had already happened with the assault on the Capitol. And so this guy was talking to her about like, oh, like, he was comparing like, has the United States really dealt with collective trauma? I don't think the West has really dealt with collective trauma and trauma recovery the way it can be in other countries, where there are dictatorships and genocides and civil wars. And he's like, can you come up with an example of how the West has faced it? Which is, number one, that's nice. That's a nice fairy tale. But she's like, I would argue, I appreciate it. She's like, I would argue that we are still dealing with the fallout from the Civil War in this country, and that there has never been she didn't say reckoning, but essentially a recovery from it. She said, because first of all, the way it played out, we don't really know who won or lost the war. There was never a clear winner. There was, the Union was preserved and slavery was abolished, but like after like 20 years, it turned into, with Jim Crow, like state-sponsored terrorism was the phrasing that she used. And it also comes up in Resma's book as well, like just these eras that have continued on from one period of our history to the next. And in order for, Spotify and other huge conglomerates and huge corporations are going to continue to support this type of nonsense until there has been recovery, which is, number one, safety has to be established where we actually can talk and reconcile our past and talk about the past and grieve it. And then hopefully repair can be made. And after repair, we can reconcile with our past. And then maybe we can move forward where we as a country are moving forward and taking an active stance against nonsense. But until that happens, until we can have that honest conversation, people like Joe Rogan are going to say things and then think that, oh, or people are going to ignore that and say, oh, well, try to come up with a bunch of justifications.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's, yeah. Ugh.
I
So,
mean, no doubt. I believe her. I agree on that level. But you know me, I'm very family systems. That's where my brain leans towards. And I just feel like it starts at home in the family. It starts with what we're teaching our kids. And because we're the ones that are putting out the next generation, and then they're the ones putting out the next generation. And granted, a lot of kids in this current generation, they're quote unquote a lot more, I hate this word, quote unquote woke, whatever you want to call it. Like,
what does woke mean?
Oh God, this is a shift. So more aware, of racial issues, of sexual issues, sexual identity issues, just more aware of mental health, supposedly, at least on the outside, right? That's the message that we're getting and we're hearing. But at the end of the day, is what we teach our kids, right? How if you have a family consistently passing down that ignorant way of thinking and looking at other races, the stereotypes, even if you're not blatantly coming out and saying, oh man, can't stand those N words. But if you're saying things like, well, like they're not typically very smart. They do kind of get in trouble. Well, the reason why they're in, do you know what I mean? Like perpetuating those stereotypes that you see on TV, hear on TV, whatever. Instead of correcting it, instead of talking to your kids, it starts at the smallest level, but it starts in the home.
It does start in the home, and it has to start in the home, but it seems like it has to be supported by society as well.
But then it will be, is what I'm saying. If everybody,
but they're ignorant families. They're ignorant. Yeah, but they're ignorant families passing on ignorance.
Exactly.
And there are people that are clueless.
That is my checking point.
We can't. So those families
passed down. I'm saying in the perfect world.
Yeah.
In the perfect, my utopian world, all of these families would be, every generation of the whatever, millennials, X generation, whatever, X.
Zers,
what the heck ever. Every single one of those families would be speaking to their kids and telling them, this, that, and the other. And then that generation passes down, healthier ways of looking at race, thinking about race, maybe even get into a point of not even like acknowledging race. Like, like, have you ever seen that movie? Crap. It totally escapes me. My kid's reading the book, and I thought it was really good that he was reading the book and he decided to watch the movie. But like in there, it's like they take it way too far, but they've found a way to like have it so that like you don't acknowledge race, you don't acknowledge you don't see differences. I'll put it that way. Like that's the whole point. And I mean, we can celebrate differences, right? But I feel like when you start honing in on specific things, negative differences, perpetuating negative stereotypes, I feel like that's when the problem ensues. And so if as parents, as families, we don't keep that way of thinking of, we don't perpetuate those same stereotypes, agree. And when I say agree to it, I don't mean like you're actually saying it, but you're not saying anything against it. You're not saying, hey, that was not okay for her to say that. I know you saw that on TV, but that's not an okay way to treat, Black people or Asian people or Hispanic people or whatever have you, right? That's what I mean.
Well, I'm down for speaking out and that it does have to start in the families because it exists all over the place in families. And I mean, it exists in our families as well, just with colorism alone, where we can have value systems and grandparents and aunties and uncles that'll say stuff and it'll be like, no, don't say that in front of my kid. That's not right. Do not, because we can perpetuate it too. It's stuff that is absorbed. It's ideas that are absorbed through the media, through music, through, lived experience. And yeah, because I don't know. I mean, maybe not you, but I have other family that'll be like, well, we had that crazy grandma. or a family who's like, yeah, our all the older generation is really caught up on coloring and how dark and how light and all of this stuff. And it's like that, even that has to be like, there's this unspoken valuation that has to be called out in families as well.
Yes.
Where it's like, no, no, don't treat other friends or other people differently or say anything denigrating, because kids come out knowing in society that, like by the time they're 5 or 6 and going to school, all of a sudden there's like this value of, I'm glad that I'm white, or I'm glad that I'm, not really dark skinned, or who knows what. And it's like insidious, and no parents are telling their kids this, but it like comes in. And so yeah, it's
that's a whole other, we won't even get into the Black community and the light skin, dark skin, like I have way too much.
Resma covers it in his book, My Grandmother's Hands. I mean, it's,
because we're not saying like, I mean, racialized trauma is racialized trauma. There's a lot happening on the outside, right, in our society. But that's not to say that we're not experiencing it in our own community. Where we perpetuate some of those same stereotypes and beliefs within ourselves and within our own community,
where we're reenacting the trauma that was established a long time ago. And
that whole, like, what was it called, paper bag thing, like,
he goes through all sorts of, there was like a paper bag, a fine tooth comb, all sorts of tests.
Okay, good. Yeah.
So
I mean, a lot of people don't know about, don't realize, like, but again, it was perpetuated outside of us first, and then we, took that into ourselves. And it's like, well, I'm more accepted because I'm lighter, but then, not saying that, all light-skinned people are thinking that. Like, light-skinned people have their own stuff too, that, like, some of them, especially like, biracial, not feeling like they fit in anywhere, feeling like I'm not Black enough for them, but I'm not white enough for them. Like, that comes with its own, like, racialized trauma, so
absolutely. And it is
whole other topic.
It's huge. It's a huge topic. And I don't know if we want to go back to microaggressions.
Yes, because I do want to say,
because I have some. Yeah.
I just want to say, like, my hope is that people will start talking about this more with their own kids, because I know for me, there are so many that I experienced in college, even in high school, and from my teachers that I didn't even recognize until adulthood. And so, like, I've been, talking to my kids, but also showing them video. There's actually YouTube videos and stuff out about microaggression, what that looks like. So I encourage everybody, like, learn more about it, talk to your kids about it so they're aware of it, so they don't internalize a lot of this and not even understand why.
Yeah. Oh, Doris, like I was thinking the same thing. Like I went to a private religious school. There were a handful of Black people in the school. And I remember my friend who is in a higher grade than I struggling with questions, but she didn't have a name for it. And so there were all of these statements that she was being faced with, and she would say, like, you guys are being racist. And they're like, what? What are you talking about? She's like, you guys are racist. And she didn't have the words to communicate for them to understand that they were just like, what? They didn't realize that they were othering her and making her feel less than, or making her feel less beautiful, or making, a series of things. And it's insidious. And I faced the same stuff. I mean, and like I'll talk to my progressive white friends and they'll be like, wow, my parents are racist too. And they don't think so. But it's everywhere. It's not just the overt racism. That's, that got squashed a long time ago for the most part. Thank you. But I mean, it has popped up. But like I will come up with, I was shopping with my newborn child probably about 10 years ago and did a bunch of grocery shopping, and I needed to stop in a store to pick up 2 items. And I was in a rush. I was carrying my newborn. I was grabbing chicken and lemons, and I didn't grab a basket. And I tell you, I must have been walking too fast in the supermarket because within a minute, this middle-aged lady was trailing me and following me throughout the store. And then I was like, really? And then I went to the produce section to get lemons, and she was walking, like making a big deal and like talking to other staff. And I'm like, are you serious? And yeah, I was in my 30s by that time. So I definitely
What was
called.
the big deal? Well, I don't understand. Why was she following you, and what was she making a big deal about?
Like just to put people on alert that maybe I was going to try to run out with $9 worth of food, by the way.
Are you
$12 worth
serious?
of food. Yes. She didn't say anything out loud. I just felt her following me the whole time, and
Yeah.
then pointing and looking, whatever the case. I talked to a manager when I got home. I'm like, look, I didn't appreciate it. And they came up with a bunch of excuses. Well, we've had, people taking stuff and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And
There's
really,
always
again,
an
it goes,
excuse.
what's that?
There's
It
always
goes
an
back.
excuse.
There's always an excuse. Teachers, I was upset when I was interviewing for my grad school program, and I talked about the reason why I wanted to be a school counselor. And I had this issue with my school counselor in high school where she was Caucasian. I gained a couple of A's, B's, and like a C on my report card. And the school counselor told me I should go for straight B's. You should try to go for straight B's. And I was like, what? I'm like, no one has ever told me to go for straight B's. And that doesn't even make any sense because I have A's on my report card. So why would I go lower? And it's yes. So I interpreted that as offensive and tone deaf and a little racist. And I was telling the grad school staff, like, who would tell their student to backtrack and go lower and not to, work. It didn't make sense. And it's not like I had D's and F's. I had one C. one C, two A's, and then the rest B's. And I remember telling the counseling staff, like, I was so offended by what the school counselor said that I was like, I want to be a school counselor because these people working with kids, I want to do better.
Mm.
And I want to offer a better service. And I didn't even jump to conclusions at that time. I was just sharing this meaningful experience in high school
Mm-hmm.
with a counselor who didn't look like me and who didn't have a relationship with me. And the staff totally dismissed the story and was like, "Oh, maybe she was using reverse psychology on you."
What? I'm sorry.
Yes.
What?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, make me use a cuss word. What the
Dude, so it's like, so it feels like traumatization over and over and over again. Yes, this is minor, but this is like a example after microaggression. Like, really? This is a counseling program and you're
Oh,
dismissing my
whew.
meaningful story in an interview?
Yes. That's
No.
disheartening in and of itself. It's like, dude, like we're supposed to be the ones who are more enlightened, unbiased, But
Uh-huh.
again, the same way with police, firemen, you're bringing your same biases into that whatever career you go into,
Yeah.
because you're all, but at least you had the foresight or self-awareness to know what, that this was not okay. I was talking to I think my oldest, when I was telling him about the microaggression video I wanted him to watch, and I was explaining to him about microaggressions because I was telling him I didn't have the understanding when I was in high school. I even partially college, I didn't have the self-awareness that I do now. Like
Mm-hmm.
I like kind of reminisce back on a incident that happened in high school in my senior year, and I was just telling him, like, at the time I really didn't think, I was confused, but I didn't think it had anything to do with race. That was very rainbow bright. Like, the world is great, everyone's great, everybody loves me, and, and my color doesn't matter, And I remember, like, it was the first day of school, and like at the time, like, I was education meant everything to me. Like, I was always in
Mm-hmm.
like the AP advanced placement classes because I wanted to, once I got to college, I wanted to be able to skip all those courses in college and, be able to start taking my courses towards my particular degree. And so I
Mm-hmm.
went into like this AP English class, and I remember looking around. Of course, nobody looked like me. That was fine. I didn't care. I sat in the front seat, pulled my book out, was just chilling. And the teacher was just looking at me like really oddly, right? And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, why does she keep staring at me? She's not looking at anybody else. Like, what is going on? And eventually she comes over to my desk and she's like, hey, so this is advanced placement literature. Did you know that this was advanced placement literature? And I was like, yeah, I know. This is my class. And she was like, okay, but this class is for
No.
advanced.
No.
And I was like, I was still scratching my head, like, what is she talking about? Like, it's like, am I speaking this is not I speaking English? Like, what? I was like, yes, this is my class. I know this is advanced placement literature. This is my class. Because you have to take a test to be able to get into that class, right?
Absolutely. So why is she even talking to you?
Yeah, I was
That's
just like,
obnoxious.
she was like, sweetie, okay, I don't want to embarrass you, but I think you're looking for a different class. She really was not letting go. And so I was like, ma'am, like, my name is, told her my name. I was like, can you just check your thing? And so she looked over and she went and got her schedule, whatever, roster, whatever. And she looks at it, and then she looks up at me and she was like, no, there's a Darcy here, but I don't have, I was like, okay, my name is Doris, not Darcy, but that is me. And she was like, okay, well, maybe there's a mistake. I was still like sitting there, like, and she was
No.
like, maybe you don't understand. This class moves very, very fast. We're going to be reading some literature that's going, it's going to be really, really like college level stuff. I don't know if you know about college and I wanted to be like, thinking back on this, I'm sitting here, all I can think is, bitch, what?
I feel like there's a stone sitting in my stomach, hearing like a horrible pit. That is the worst.
At that time, I did not understand. I did not know this was a microaggression.
She thought you were Irish. She thought you were Irish. Darcy McDuffie.
She's like, what are you doing here, Irish? So I think eventually someone in the class spoke up, like one of the white kids, and they were like, she's been in all my advanced placement classes. I'm pretty sure she can keep up. I'm not going to say the teacher's name because she's still alive, but she was like, I'm pretty sure she can keep up. And she looked at me and she was like, okay, Darcy, I'll just be watching, just see, if at any time this just gets to be too much for you. And I never even thought to say, hey, why are you only asking me this? Why aren't you like, again, I was a straight A student. A lot of the kids that were around me, they were B's, some C's, because I had classes with them. And I remember like I made an A in that class, by the way. So shove it, lady.
Dude, that's the thing.
Like halfway through, she was like, you're doing really well in this class. Like, I don't give A's. I don't give A's. I don't give A's out. It's rare for me. And so, you've earned this. You've earned these A's. And, and she said something that sounded very similar. I cannot remember her exact words, but it's something that they say when it's very, I find it extremely racist because my...
Oh. Is it, you're so articulate?
No. It was more like speaking about other Black people as a whole, but it was kind of like, you're different.
Yes, the exceptionalism.
You are you like the way
you are the
exception to the rule. Yes. Like, maybe I was, hasty, I was wrong, whatever, but it was more like you're the exception, not that like she's in the wrong for making the assumption and stereotyping or whatever have you, just again.
It is. Those people that discount us do motivate me to blow them out of the water, because I was also fired up when that school counselor told me to go for straight B's. And I was like, this bitch. And I was like, I got straight A's. I got straight A's that quarter, Doris.
Oh, let's go. It's like you want to shove it in their face. How the fuck is
I did. I was like, I can't wait to go back to that meeting. And she said nothing. And I was like, you probably don't even remember. What she said.
The other thing. They don't allow them to, because they don't know. Like when I was watching that video on microaggressions, they were talking, this one professor was on there talking about that she had done microaggressions herself and had no knowledge that she was doing it at the time. Like I think she said, I think there was a kid in the class who his parents were from Mexico. Everyone else in the class was Caucasian, and the teacher was Caucasian. And there was something that they were reading, and it was like a Spanish word, and she looked to the one person whose parents were from Mexico and just made the assumption that he must know, because his parents are not thinking maybe someone else in the class knows Spanish. Maybe he doesn't know, and that without realizing that you don't know that that's actually a microaggression, like making that assumption that because he is the only one in the class that quote unquote looks like he speaks Spanish, then let me go over here. Yes, not recognizing that is, and I remember when she was talking about on the video, she was like, thinking back on it, she was like, I don't know what damage that caused that person, but she was like, I just want to say I'm sorry. I didn't know.
Hmm.
I didn't know.
Some of the things that I try to teach my girls, but it's also something that especially I need to work on myself as far as stand and saying things. And I wish I could have done that as a younger person. Was when somebody says something, instead of holding it in my body and being tense or freezing or like, "Ugh," or going over my head, making them accountable by asking them, "What do you mean by that?"
Yes.
Too many times, way too many times. What do you mean by that? Even just feeling comfortable, and this comes back to vulnerability, is saying, "Hey, I don't like what you said." And that's it. And so that's interesting. Yeah, those are two things that I try to keep. And, not, yeah, to not be afraid to ask people what they mean when they say things, because most of the time people aren't aware of what they're saying. And when they do, all of a sudden it's like, oh, 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 then they might, apologize or maybe take a step back and stop to think about what they're saying before they just act. That's kind of where I'm at.
I
Trying
think
to
that's the
think.
biggest thing, is that so many people don't realize that they're perpetuating any type of racialized trauma, or else they probably wouldn't do it. I think that
Mm-hmm.
just because of things they've, I don't know, just yeah. I mean, because like the lady with the asking, the kid who looked to her like he spoke Spanish, like not a lot of people would recognize that that's a microaggression, that's
Mm-hmm.
a racial bias that could potentially cause racialized trauma towards someone.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's true.
There was something else. I want to make sure I'm not.
I, on the site that I was looking at, examples of individual racism and then systemic racism as
Mm-hmm.
well. And so, we were talking about microaggressions, but even within the past few years, especially with the COVID-19 outbreak, there were nearly 1,500 reported incidents of anti-Asian racism in just 1 month.
Wow.
Reports included incidents of physical and verbal attacks, as well as reports of anti-Asian discrimination in private businesses. In 2018, 38% of Latinx people were verbally attacked for speaking Spanish, were told to go back to their countries, called a racial slur and or treated unfairly by others. And then over the course of 1 year, Twitter saw 4.2 million anti-Semitic tweets in just the English language alone. These included anti-Semitic stereotypes, promotion of anti-Semitic personality or media, symbols, slurs, or anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, including Holocaust denial. They come up with examples of systemic racism, where Black people make up 12% of the country's population, but make up around 33% of the total prison population. And this overrepresentation is really a reflection of racist arrests and policing, like an overwhelming response of policing in these neighborhoods, as well as racist sentencing practices. They cite examples of previous and current policies of racial displacement, exclusion, and segregation have left all BIPOC less likely than whites to own their homes, regardless of level of education, income, location, marital status, and age. And I mean, it just goes on and on. They talk about a lack of cultural competency and therapy training, financial incentives, and geographical isolation have created barriers systemically in providing appropriate mental health resources in Native American communities. in rates of suicide in these communities are 3.5 times higher than racial ethnic groups with the lowest rates of suicide. And so, yeah. I mean, we spent most of our time talking about microaggressions, but
Mhm.
it is rampant. It's all over the
Yeah.
place.
I will say, like, since we are talking about racialized trauma, before we go, I do want to give some,
Mhm.
let's do some psychoeducational stuff.
Yes, yes, yes,
Piggybacking off
yes.
of what you just said. So,
Yeah.
some of the causes of racialized trauma can be exposure to racial or ethnic stereotypes. That includes like academics or textbooks that assert that some racial groups are better than other racial groups or
Mhm.
worse at certain tasks. Fears about personal safety. An example would be um, a Latino person fearing the label of an undocumented immigrant or a person of color fearing abuse by police. Witnessing members of, your own racial group receiving abuse. An example of this would be the Rodney King thing, all the stuff
Mhm.
on the news about all these young Black males being shot and killed, beaten
Mhm.
by police. Any things that you view in real life are on the media, even if you're not personally, the victim
Yes.
actually witnessing this is
Yeah.
also a trauma. It is also traumatic.
Yeah,
Um,
and can I just add something on that too? Yes, because and I've heard media people talk about this, especially Black artists, where when there's such a narrow representation of Blacks that they're either criminalized or seen as slaves when that is not a complete picture.
mhm.
And again, that's traumatizing. And so I appreciate artists like Shonda Rhimes, Issa Rae, all of these people where
Oh my
you are
gosh, that's
getting
right. Whew.
a wide representation
Yes.
of people, of Black people or people of color. And it's not just being victims
Mhm.
or enslaved or criminals
Mhm.
or, threatening. And so that, that in and of itself can be traumatizing and lead towards this self loathing that slips into. I just wanted to add that. Please keep on.
Along the lines of like witnessing members of your own racial group receiving this type of abuse, also racist abuse of loved ones, like your partner, your parents, or children, like witnessing that, like that is also extremely traumatic. Like I've seen like what was it, like um videos of like police pulling over a car and the girlfriend, saying, they haven't done anything wrong. And then actually, sitting there witnessing their loved one be brutalized,
Mm,
beaten, abused when they've done absolutely wrong is extremely traumatic to obviously to her partner, but also to her just actually sitting there witnessing it. Another cause
mm,
could be direct exposure to racist abuse or discrimination, like hearing racist stereotypes at work, people joking about it, or being the recipient of a racial slur. That's actually a racialized trauma. Somebody calling
mhm,
you the N word. Like, how, I don't know if you've ever seen like the videos of like, it's almost like, obviously you get triggered, right? That's the buzzword in therapy. You get triggered and then you have some type of emotional response, right? So you see these videos of like someone saying the N word, and then all of a sudden that Black person just like something snaps and they just immediately get very physical or extremely verbally aggressive with that person, is because that deep seated, like, it's just like the hurt, the pain that word carries
Mm-hmm.
It's like you hear that word and you are immediately like, it is an immediate trauma to you. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, just I think that's why you see so many people just snapping, just like being so hurt, and it infuriates me when I hear you know, people of other races saying, well, you guys use the N-word, why can't we use the N-word? Like, what's the big deal? And it's like, it is not the same. It will never, ever, ever be the same. Ever.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
plus, Black people don't say we say we don't say, and it's not the same. It is not the same. And I
Yeah,
won't go
here's the thing. Here's the thing. Here's the thing. Here's always a test to see if they really feel comfortable saying it. If
mm-hmm,
they were the only white person surrounded by Black people, would they use that term?
mm-hmm. Of course
Probably
not.
not. Probably not. So if you can't say it in a multitude, and then there's a question, do you avoid predominantly Black spaces? Predominantly Black where you're the only one? No. And you definitely shouldn't be saying it. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I wrestle with whether or not it should be said when it's referencing somebody else using the word, where it's not used in a derogatory manner and it's like, oh, these people are blah 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 blah, or you're referring to literature or that type of thing. But I also don't think it's necessary. And I really don't have to present a rationale. I just don't like it. And so if you're my friend, I would think that you would be caring enough for me to be able to say, I don't like the use of it, and you not use it again. And then just leave it at that. So
Exactly. Like, um, I was in this uh party chat. You know, I'm a gamer, and like I was in this party
I can't
chat.
wait for our episode on games.
I was in this party chat, and like and this guy was, he was saying something, and another guy was like, oh, you look like you might have earned your black card, man. And he was like, for real? I was like, for real? And he's like, so I can say the N-word now, right? And everyone just got super quiet. And I'm like, what? No, what are you what? What does that mean? Did you get to? And he's like, what's the big deal? Why can't I? And I was like, what? No, you're black. You're revoked. At this moment, you're revoked. And that started a conversation of like him talking about like, you know, how he actually does use the N-word when he's with his friends, and how we call each other that. Like, we say that all the time. It's not a big deal. And then like, and I was like, but if you knew, you know, a black person was within earshot, or you know, even in that room, would you still be chuckling about it and calling you know, each other the N-word? And he was like, no, I wouldn't. And I was like, think about that. Like, why is it okay when there are no black people around for you and your Caucasian friends to be throwing around, calling each other the N-word, you know? But you know, if it's so okay. And I do want to just add this one last thing. So like, and obviously this is not a comprehensive like list of the causes. I mean, the causes are unlimited because trauma is subjective. You know, we can't just tell you, hey, like, that's not trauma. You know, like if you feel like it has affected you on a deep level and it's caused you emotional distress, it's a trauma for you, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
one of the last ones that was mentioned was others not taking your experience of racism seriously. And you talked about this earlier, but that is an actual racialized trauma, is telling, talking to someone about your experience with racism and them not validating them, demeaning it, them, saying things like, oh, well, maybe that person was just using reverse psychology. Whatever that person said, it is demeaning, it's degrading, it is invalidating, it's hurtful, it's painful, it hurts you on a level that is indescribable to people who will never and have never experienced it.
Yeah. Yep.
I just want to throw out some symptoms. So some symptoms of racialized trauma would be distress related to the trauma, avoiding things that remind you of the trauma, intense anxiety or depression related to the trauma, feeling distracted by memories and thoughts of the trauma, negative thoughts about yourself, other people, or the world, and increased sensitivity or reactivity. Some people also experience disassociation, kind of this feeling of being numb or disconnected from themselves or others. Weathering, this is the chronic health effects of exposure to racial discrimination and trauma. And so marginalized populations typically have worse overall health and higher risk of cardiovascular disease and other ailments. And this may be because of a lifetime of racial trauma they face. Prolonged trauma and poor mental health. Unlike some other traumas, racial discrimination continues to permeate much of your everyday life. So this means that marginalized communities may face chronic trauma, aggression, and it may make it very difficult to recover from racist abuse. And that's any type of abuse. I tell people all the time, it's very difficult when you are experiencing trauma on a daily basis. It is so much more difficult to heal. So when we can remove ourselves from the environment or remove ourselves from that trauma, that's going to benefit us the most. But we can't remove ourselves from the society. We can't remove we're here, we're stuck, we're wearing, we're in this body and we're in this skin for life. And I'm gonna get off my soapbox now. So I think
what? Don't jump down. But we do, I guess, yeah. Do you have any thoughts or things about ways to heal?
I will say
you mentioned teaching, creating culture and empowerment in families.
Yes.
Teaching our children.
Even therapy.
Also challenging therapy for sure.
Yeah, so many of us suffer in silence. Just not a lot of people think to go to therapy to heal from racialized trauma. They just feel like this is just a part of life and I just have to deal with it. But no, you can actually go to therapy and get because a lot of the symptoms of PTSD are what you experience with racialized trauma. So you can still go to therapy and get that same treatment of psychotherapy, CBT, DBT. And then, some people do have underlying depression because of it. So they may be referred out to a doctor for, not saying you have to get on medication, but some people may, be referred out.
That is an option. Yeah.
Also, support groups. There are some support groups out there.
Or you can start your own support group.
Yes.
With friends and people that you trust, where you can have an honest conversation and create a space to listen to one another.
Exactly. There's also some benefit to actually taking part in activism and against racial injustice. That's also extremely beneficial.
And it doesn't have, it can be official in an official capacity, but also an intention that you set on a daily basis of how you're going to call out or challenge or actively resist. stereotypes, those microaggressions, whether it happens to you or you see it happening to someone else.
Mm-hmm. So having a supportive community, obviously self-care. I could never say that enough to any and everybody. Avoiding relationships where, if possible, with people who do dismiss the seriousness of racial trauma. Like, that's not beneficial to you to be around that. All it's going to do is trigger you, upset you, push you deeper into it. Identifying racial trauma triggers and avoiding them, mostly in times of intense stress. Also, like, I know a lot of my clients, like, and they're like, wait, no, I don't want to do that. But like, it's not running away, and it's not avoiding. Going on, like, limiting media diet is not always a bad thing, taking a break from, social media, TikTok or Instagram reels, or, whatever else that it's going to upset you. Like, there's a way.
I'm so glad you.
What?
I'm so glad you said this and it wasn't me. The gamer said it, ladies and gentlemen.
But you're not like avoiding. You're not saying I'm not well informed.
Exactly.
You're not doing that, but you are taking care of yourself in the manner in which you're not constantly exposing yourself to images that is harmful to you, is hurting you. So, like,
dude, take 10 minutes to go on a walk outside if it's not freezing cold, just to sit outside and to listen to your body and to listen to whatever is going on outside instead of being behind a device all the time can be just one way to take care of yourself.
Yes. Not saying don't ever get on, because obviously we're technically social media on a podcast.
Yes.
But not saying, never saying, in moderation, and when you're already upset about something, you're already struggling, stressed out, maybe stay away from things that is going to just exacerbate. Like, I had the conversation with one of my clients today. Like, she was like, like really down, having a really rough week, and she was like, I noticed when I was watching, I think she was watching Real Housewives or something, one of the reality shows, and she was like, I noticed that, like, at one point I said, you should really stop watching this because it's really upsetting you and you're comparing yourself and your life to this and this. And I was like, why didn't you walk away? And she was like, I don't know. But I did think that. And I was like, okay, well, we're going to do a week of no reality shows, in addition to this whole plan I came up with her for self-care and trying to elevate her mood. She was just like, I don't know if I can do that, but I'm going to try to stay away. And I was like, I think if you do try, you'll see the benefit. You'll see how, your perception and your thinking changes towards more positivity, the less you invite negativity into your life.
Just the act of taking care. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just the act of taking care of herself. And really, those things can serve as an agitation, but they also serve as a distraction from your own pain.
Yep.
And so there's something to be said about sitting in comfort.
Yep.
And processing it and experiencing it. And it's uncomfortable. And you can acknowledge your feelings of wanting to distract with TikTok or distract with the latest episode of Real Housewives or binge watching the next, what's hot right now. Whatever's on Netflix. Yellow Jackets. That's what I'm watching.
Oh, that's a good show. That's a good show.
It's been on my queue. It's been on my queue, and I started it. But
how have you not finished it? How have you not binged the entire season? It's so good.
Ooh, I took a long time to watch it. And I'm trying not to binge watch anymore. There's another show that's pretty funny called Murderville on Netflix.
Yeah, I saw the preview for that. Yeah, I think I might check it out.
But I'm like, I told my brother, I'm like, I'm not going to binge watch it. I said, I'm just going to have a daily dose. That's all I need to savor it. Maybe mindfully watch TV, mindfully consume the entertainment.
I like that.
I've got a bunch of other stuff to do. And I know that if I don't get outside and go on a walk or a hike and feel my muscles, I get agitated and cranky and in a horrible place. I mean, it's not a horrible place, but it's not the best place. And so, yeah, good for you. Did you have any other, you talked about self-care and activism.
Oh yeah. I think that was actually, it just,
okay.
And then like,
there was something
identifying racial microaggressions when you can, and then role playing how and when to respond to them. I think that's helpful too. Like, knowing what microaggressions are, knowing how to identify them, and then responding to them as such, because I think it also really becomes internalized when we walk away from situations of microaggression without having been assertive and, communicated exactly how we felt, how it made us feel, and why it was a microaggression. But that's
good. There's I'll just mention this website, Mental Health of America, that I was using during this podcast. It's mhanational.org/racial trauma. They have links for directories for QPOC populations, directories for Latinx, directories for Black people, directories for Asian people, for connections to therapists and mental health networks, as well as general multicultural and religious directories. They also have links to racism recovery plan steps, nothing tool, self-care guide, self-care wheel, 100 radical acts of self-care. And then also a section on how you can help your community heal from racial trauma. And so there are links as well to Project Let's Resources on race and mental health. We Are Native. There's a Therapy for Black Girls Thrive Tribe Facebook group, Asian self-care toolkit for undocumented communities, and a Black Muslim community toolkit. So those are just a few links, but that's on Mental Health America. So I think we covered a lot of the psychoeducational.
Yeah, maybe if we get a chance, like maybe put the links on the Instagram page, and
for sure
that might be helpful too. Those sound like some really good links with wealth of information. Because I appreciate you as always. It was enlightening and cathartic.
This was. I think this is the most I was riled up and yelling.
I wish I could say that, but I'm pretty riled all the time.
Maybe I am too. Maybe I'm just not self-aware.
I don't think we've said the B word on our podcast before.
We haven't.
We said that a couple of times.
I know. That's what I was thinking of.
What is it about racial talk that gets you just
activated? Where are you feeling that in your body? Yes, but you know what? But it was also, I mean, it's also good. I mean, we're doing this to bring awareness to it and to reach as many people as possible. But just having the conversation with you creates a space for healing for me as well. Just to be like, oh, there's someone here that I can talk to. So I'm grateful for you too.
Ditto. Well, thank you. I appreciate you as always. This was a good one. Hope everybody is taking care of themselves. And I'm going to keep saying self-care, self-care, self-care to anyone who's out there listening. Take care of yourselves, okay?
Stay safe.